What is going on, Metaverse? I'm really excited to be joined today by a special guest. Kevin from the Arcade team is joining us, and he has been really a partner in crime with me for the last 6 or 8 months or so, working with a number of Web3 gaming projects. Kevin is the head of Arcade Consulting, and really, we've had a chance to work with dozens of projects as they're building through what has been a pretty challenging time in the Web3 gaming industry, but also really exciting one to see good projects continue to push forward in the space. Kevin, it's great to have you back with us. You are actually a repeat interviewee on Annie Knows, so pleased to have you with me
Yeah,
here.
second time. I'm really excited about this. So
Yeah.
thanks for having me back.
Yeah, and really, I mean, it's kind of in a different capacity to a fair degree since the last time that we met. So last time we were talking about the general Arcade2Earn platform and
Yeah.
structure, and that, as you know, is still going on. But your role has changed a little bit. So, maybe tell us a little bit about that transition for you and what you're up to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with the arcade platform, I, worked in the business development role, working on our fundraising, our partnerships, product development. And one thing that we saw when we were doing a lot of the networking with a lot of the game projects that we were looking to in the arcade mission pool platform was that our team's expertise in really all things Web3 and gaming was really being sought after in response by a lot of these projects. So we would meet with these projects to understand more about their game, see if it would be a good fit for the mission pool. And as we began that dialogue with the company or the projects, we realized that there was a lot of value we could provide back to these projects because every project has kind of a different skill set in its founders, and a lot of projects have smaller teams to begin with because they're startups. And so we realized that with the arcade team, because we have such a varied background, a diverse background in what our skill sets are, we realized that we could provide a lot of value back to these projects through consulting services. So about 5 to 6 months ago, I transitioned from being business development for Arcade to being the managing director for Arcade Consulting Services, which we call ACS because Arcade Consulting Services is a mouthful to say every time. So
Yeah,
it's
yes, it is.
we dubbed it as ACS, and that's what we're going by. And so as managing director, I help structure these consulting relationships with the projects, which then get to utilize the full bandwidth of the arcade team to help with their projects. So when these projects are looking for advisors and consultants, instead of having just an individual person, we can use the full strength and power of the arcade team to serve that consulting role.
Yeah, and there's really such a huge need for this in the space. As you mentioned, a lot of these projects, they're startups. Maybe they have plans to grow to a 20 or a 50 or 100 person studio over the next months or years, but they're not there yet, right? They have some gaps, and they need knowledgeable individuals to help fill some of that. So, I also, uh, recognize that the challenges in addressing Web3 requirements is also much higher than in Web2 in the gaming industry. Talking to founders, they usually tell me like 20 to 40% additional complexity and scope. What challenges that are unique to Web3 do you find that most projects are struggling with today?
Yeah, it definitely varies by team, but what we see a lot of, especially on the gaming side, we see founders and teams that are really skilled at what they do best, which is creating a really fun and enjoyable video game, and that's what they want to focus on. They want to focus on how do I make the best game. And so that might include the Web3 components, but a lot of what makes a great video game is the video game is the game itself. It's not the blockchain integration. So a lot of these teams, they want to focus on building the game, but they don't have maybe the necessary team members that can help them do the Web3 aspect, so all the blockchain integration, even maybe the NFT side of things. But a lot of what we see is some of the traditional, business operations standpoint. They're video game, developers, and they're not financiers. They're not, networking people. They're not. They don't, understand all the ins and outs of corporate structures and fundraising. And so, even though there's a lot more help that's also needed on the development side from the Web3 component to interact with the game itself, there's also a big need for services and help on things, like legal advice and user experience and, their game economy to make sure that it functions in a sustainable way. So, what ACS does is we really fill in the gaps depending on, that specific team skill set. So, maybe a game developer, has their game creation all figured out, but they don't know exactly how all the economics of their game are going to work. They don't want a situation where, either the value of their, token or the utility of their NFTs, isn't sustainable with how they build it. So, we look at a lot of these economic principles, supply and demand, price elasticity to help them, again, focus on developing the game and making it fun. And then we can help them, build their economy and build their business around it.
Hmm. Yeah, and for sure, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different elements there, and oftentimes a founder has one or two really specific things that they're bringing to the table, and yeah, they've built a team around them to help fill in some of those gaps. But there's so much to have to deal with in a startup.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. So tell us a little bit about the ACS structure, right? So you mentioned and some of our audience knows from following me as I've been supporting as well. You've got these consultants that are specialized in different things. So maybe give some examples of what it would look like, for an ACS engagement with a project.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first meet with, a project, it's really an in-depth needs analysis. We ask the team, what gaps do they find in their day-to-day operations. And so I think that's the really fun thing about ACS is that, no two clients are the same. That, like you said, the founders have some skill sets, they built a team around them. So a game might have, all of their development handled, but they don't have their come to market strategy handled. So, that's where we will, involve our marketing team, our business development and partnerships people at, Arcade and ACS to help fill that gap in that regard. We have other projects that need help with fundraising, so we, not only just networking them and introducing them to VCs, but we really kind of do like a project audit where we look at, what are the strengths and weaknesses of that business, behind the game, the actual business, so that when they go to look at, going fundraising, they're not, stumped by some questions or, they don't maybe not have the answer to something because they don't understand, corporate cap tables and stuff like that. So, we can engage a customer or a client in a lot of different ways depending on what they need. And that could involve, marketing, come to market strategy, legal advice, game economy design, game loops, everything like that. For a client we have that's building a game right now, they're looking at incorporating, land into their game, in the next few months. And we had a brainstorming strategy about all the different ways that land could be, utilized and have utility in the game to not only provide, opportunity for, your day-to-day gamers or your people that actually want to, experience the full game, plus, what we call the meta gamers, which, kind of take the economic standpoint from it. So yeah, there's a lot of different services we can provide. And, the Arcade team, which is the fuel behind ACS, ACS is, kind of the platform. And then we utilize, all the team at Arcade, plus, we have other consultants that we're now bringing in because of, how many projects we're starting to advise and consult with. So, we're actually, out there, gathering other consultants that specialize in other areas that now we can offer, even more skill set and services to our consulting clients. So yeah, no two are the same, which makes it, a lot of fun. And, it's really just matching up, what that project needs with what, skills and experience and background that we have to offer.
Yeah, I think right there you hit a key principle that I always like to remind projects and other consultants and builders in the space about, which is every project has a base genre of game, assuming it's a game development studio. Obviously, there are infrastructure platforms and so on. But if you're building an actual game, you've got a genre that you're working towards. Maybe you have a new take on it, or there's a combination of a couple of genres that you're building, but you've got a fundamental gameplay loop that you have in mind from the beginning. And uh, oftentimes it's easy to just approach that and say, "Oh, let's take an NFT, let's take a token, stick them on top of the standard genre of game, and we're just going to go to market with that." But really, that kind of misses somewhat of the point, but it also makes it very difficult to have a sustainable economic loop, because there's a reason that we don't often see the real world economy connected to in-game economies, because it's a very challenging thing to set up in a way that's going to work long term for years after gamers get in, and you've got the normal market forces that are impacting the value of tokens, the value of NFTs, the utility of them. So I always like to remind people that every solution needs to be custom based on the game you're trying to build and also the experience you're trying to give your
Mhm.
users. Because it's really you can't really do like plug and play just with tokenomics or just with make this an NFT that is transferable as an asset in the game. So I really love that idea and the concept of giving each project the ability to be kind of met wherever they are and what's the specifics of what they're trying to build out. How have you found each of the projects that you and ACS are working with? How have you found that they've responded to that type of an approach?
Yeah, they love it. I mean, a lot of these projects are in their early stage, and any help that they can get in the areas that they're not, their core purpose in, and I think by that explanation that Annie just did, it likes to remind people is exactly why we have people like Annie as our consultants that work with these projects, and they really love the fact that we're not just taking a standard format and dropping it on them and saying, hey, fit your vision inside this box. I think it's probably the first two or three, meetings or calls we do with these projects where it's really an in-depth analysis of, what's your vision and how do we make it, come to life? Because we're not trying to advise or consult these projects into a specific mold. We really want to take that vision of that founding team and say, hey, tell us how you want to build this. Tell us what you want the end experience to be for the user, and let's fill in the gaps to make that happen. For first person shooter games, they've got a totally different experience that they want for their user base, and then you might have a real time strategy or a builder type game where they want something completely different. And so that's where our team's experience of being gamers for many years. I mean, actually, I think that's maybe one of the detriments of ACS is I have a bunch of gamers as consultants. So, but but no, I mean, it's just so funny that if you told all these people that are consultants for us now, 15, 20 years ago when they were kids, like, hey, do you ever think like you'll play video games and help video game developers make better products and network them with other partners and stuff? I don't think anybody would believe that. I mean, I myself,
Probably not.
I myself still don't believe that what we do at ACS is considered like a job. But yeah, the clients just really appreciate it, and it's really fun to go into a new project for the first time and get to know the founding team and understand their vision. So yeah, I think it's kind of a breath of fresh air in the advisor or consulting space. When we were building Arcade, we had a great team of advisors. I don't think Arcade really would have gotten to where it was without, some of our core advisors and the guidance and relationships that they helped us form. And so we wanted to take that approach and say, hey, what if we could deliver, that same kind of service, but take it even up a notch where, instead of just being considered advisors, we're actually considered, part of their team, helping them build. And so for a lot of these small founding teams, just having that resource, maybe avoid common pitfalls that, maybe don't appear, super big to the public, but, did you, file your corporation papers in the right way? Did you structure your cap table the right way? Did you, employ outside vendors or services at the right time of your timetable? All of these things are just little tweaks that projects can make to, make their fundraising and runway last longer, and again allow them to focus on what they like doing best, which is building, a really awesome game. Or, if there are other projects, we do consult, other projects in the Web3 space, besides just games. Again, just helping to not make those early kind of dumb mistakes that set you back or create obstacles. And so teams really just love having that professional partner to help guide them through, being an entrepreneur and a business owner.
Hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned kind of helping to speed up and ramp up the projects on the front end. Um, that's one of the big advantages that I think, whether it's advisors to projects, whether it's consultants or partners, um, each of these roles has the ability, if they're doing their function correctly, to help connect projects to other builders, other projects, other founders in the space that may be necessary in a lot of unique ways. And this is one of the biggest gaps that I've seen, whether I'm doing consulting for a project or whether I'm just talking with the dev team, the mods, whoever, is that there's so many needs, and a lot of these companies are new to the sector, that it's often difficult to even know who's providing what services. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're a game development studio, you're going to need someone to do analytics for you. You're going to need someone to run some infrastructure support, some marketing activities. You may need someone to do wallet integration and design, marketplaces. I mean, all of these are challenges that a typical Web2 game studio, even if they're like an indie or a startup studio, they don't really have challenges to deal with, right? They just go to Google and say, okay, who are the top
Mm-hmm.
three largest organizations in this space, right? If I'm looking for web services, I know I can talk to Amazon and off I go, right? But if I want to do layer one or layer two blockchain support, who do I go to, right? I mean, even if you're a Web3 native and you have a pretty good sense of most of the popular chains, you have no real good idea about which are better for business development and partnership and communication. And so just being able to be resources to help connect the founders and these teams with the individuals and the projects that may be able to be, some of those gaps that they need moving forward, is an essential function as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's such a, we think, blockchain gaming and crypto projects and stuff, we think it's, kind of a small world. But when you start working in this space and you actually see, how many potential partners there are, how many service providers there are, how many, different projects are offering different services, it can be, kind of that paralysis by analysis where you don't really know who to turn to. And then you go get, quotes, or you talk to, four different groups, and the founders are kind of just throwing their hands up in the air saying, well, I literally just don't know which direction to go. And then, a couple months goes by and they're in the same spot than they were when they kind of started the process of trying to find these networking partners. And so, yeah, like you can, go Google sometimes, like who's the biggest or who's the largest, doing this potential service. But a lot of startups, can't just go to the biggest firm in the space, because those biggest firms in the space charge such a premium.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are really geared towards those massively funded, really big projects. And that can leave, the smaller but really talented projects, kind of looking for who their preferred partners can be. So yeah, a lot of what we do at ACS is networking with our other infrastructure partners to then, help match people up for needs and what services can be offered. So that's a really fun part of what we do at ACS too, is just, linking all these different people together so that we make this, kind of big world a little bit smaller. And again, save people, time, energy, and resources. They can, focus on, that next map they're building or that next character iteration or something like that. And don't have to worry maybe about some of the day-to-day operational stuff.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a huge advantage. So a lot of my audience members on the channel that are probably watching this video right now are builders in the industry. They're whether they're founders or they're dev team members or they're marketers. This is a group that I try to cater to with some of my content. As I think there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of hot topics that come up in the industry, and yeah, I get a lot of good feedback from the folks that I want to be interacting with the most, which are the people that are helping to push the space forward. That my content's beneficial because it gives them an insight into what's going on broader within the industry, whereas they're usually very focused on their project
Mm-hmm.
and then like their immediate partners that they're working with. So let's say that one of our audience members today is a founder, is a lead for development for these projects, and they're thinking to themselves, "This sounds pretty good. I might actually want to talk to someone like ACS and see about plugging some of the gaps that I have in my project." What would one of them do if they wanted some additional assistance from ACS?
Absolutely. So, can just reach out to me. We'll have, my contact information in the video notes here, or if they know anybody else on the ACS team. But it really just starts out with us getting to know each other. So can reach out to me. We'll set up an initial meeting. Usually it's myself and a couple other people on the ACS team, really depending on an initial email or chat back and forth, and some review of the project to see what we think could be done. So initial meeting is a couple of us from the ACS side. We dig in with the founder, 30 to 60 minutes to understand the vision, understand what gaps they see in their project. And so that really kind of starts the relationship. And we really just want to make sure at the end of the day that the project feels like they're getting a really good value and support for what they're looking for. And so that initial needs meeting, it's just here's where we're at, lay it all out on the table. And it's a really fun meeting the first time because you get to know a group or a team for the first time. And that needs analysis is really what sets the floor for, sets the stage for what we're going to do long term. So yeah, it's pretty casual at first, because we want to make sure that we can do what the client is asking us to do. And only if it really kind of meets both ways, then do we continue. We really take the approach of wanting to provide all that extra value to the client. And so we don't take on every client because we just don't have the bandwidth, and we don't want to be one of those advisors or consulting firms that you throw on the pitch deck and you get on a call with us maybe once a month, and that's all you get from us. And so it really is a an in-depth relationship to make sure that works. And so every one of them is different. So yeah, it just starts with a basic needs analysis and kind of get to know each other, video call, and then we take it from there. But yeah, we're excited to meet, any builders in the space. And, there's even a lot of projects that come to us, and maybe it's just not, the perfect right fit, but we still help, network those people with other people in our circle. So, even though we have to limit, how many clients we can take on just because of bandwidth, we still like to meet all builders in the space, because you never know where we can link different networking partners that we have with with some of these other people that maybe aren't clients, but now become, our friends and other networking partners. So there's so much opportunity for ACS and the larger Arcade team to work with these, other builders and founders that, yeah, just reach out, via the different contact methods, and, we'll get that, initial call set up.
Yeah, that's one of the elements that I think has been most fun and engaging for me to be working in this space is when I'm talking with a new project, and you find out, okay, this project is building XYZ. Knowing a lot of the work that's being done across the industry, you can immediately see parallels. And so I'll have a discussion with a founder, and they're trying to build some model, or they need some support in an area, and instantly knowing, oh, there's these two or three other projects or builders that I can connect them with. And again, like, this is just part of the ethos of Web3, and I think that's one of the most fun parts is
Mm-hmm.
typically in a Web2 industry framework. If you're a consultant, you're not giving away any information for free. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to connect one of your clients or a potential client with someone else unless you've got an engagement and a contractual obligation with them. That's not really the case here, because again, we as an industry are so early on. We want to ensure that all these projects are succeeding and are able to build effectively. And so that ability to help everyone with that idea that the rising tide lifts all boats, I think is super exciting to be a part of. And that just honestly makes it more fun and engaging every day than working in Web 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the we definitely, subscribe to that ethos of, the rising tide lifts all boats, and we want to make sure that the right boats are being lifted. I think, we saw in this space over, 2022, that, people that were revered, as gods or titans, or, infallible, experts in this space, turned out not to be. We saw, probably three or four of the biggest people in the space, come down, from their pedestals. And we really take the time to get to know teams and make sure, we're working with people that have, the right morals, the right ethics. And by that group of people all supporting each other, through our ACS clientele, but our bigger network, we believe it gives those projects that are doing things right and care about their communities, and care about, kind of the different ethos of Web3, of community, and those type of things. Those are the projects that we really want to make sure get their chance to, to evolve and succeed. We can't promise that every client we advise is going to be the next, top three game, or the next, top DeFi project, but, we'll do our best to make sure that that project has, the shot that, they get their opportunity to deliver, and have something cool in the marketplace that, people can experience and use.
Yeah. Yeah, and overall, there's a lot of funding that's come into the industry, and so as you said, not every project is going to succeed. I think at the last I had seen was around 19 billion in the last 2 years that's come, and that's Web3 gaming specifically. That's not Web3. So obviously that means there's a lot of projects that aren't going to be fully successful. But making sure that we're backing and supporting the ones that have that right mindset is really critical. So with that said, a lot of the work that we are seeing on the ACS side right now, and that I see in my individual support for projects, is on funding and fundraising. A lot of projects, regardless of when they started, whether it was 2021, 2022, they may be having to do a raise in the middle of what's honestly a pretty brutal time right now.
Yeah.
You've got the kind of end of the year and holiday season, running up on top of what's been a frankly pretty brutal bear market for a while. You come from a traditional finance background, which I love. It helps give me a lot of insights because that's not the sector that I'm from. What's your take on the current and upcoming market conditions that projects are seeing right now, and how are they approaching it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the interesting thing is what we actually learned, on the arcade side when we were doing our fundraising, is that the holiday season lasts about from like middle of November till middle or end of January, because not only do you have, the Western holidays of Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, but then you have the Chinese New Year, that happens, in varying times. I think this year it's January 23rd. And so, during that time, depending on, which market you're working with, I mean, it can be, 2 months of not a ton of activity and traction, but we're seeing actually a lot more, just activity and interest in this first week of, 2023 than, we kind of did in the third quarter of 2022. And yes, 2022 was very challenging because, a lot of game studios were, invested in 2021 and early 22. And there wasn't the level of due diligence put into, the projects maybe as looking back the VCs would have done. And so, there's much more care now to, really do an in-depth analysis on, the project to make sure that, it is going to be around, for more than 12 months, that they can deliver their project. So, fundraising in Web3. When I first came into it in 2021, I was just shocked by how easy it was, to get money. I mean, people told us at Arcade when we started raising, like, people are just going to throw checks at you, and you might have to say no to people. And I was just, I was kind of like blown back by that. I was like, wow, like, really, you can raise money for a project and you're going to get so much interest that, you're going to tell people no. And I mean, and that's what happened in 21 and early 22. I mean, you actually got to choose, which backers you wanted based on, their different value add. And, now that's changed a little bit because, the markets didn't help. A lot of VCs, have assets in different, crypto related assets. And so, those positions have definitely changed and maybe dried up some of the liquidity, but there's still a lot of money being raised for gaming. And that's what I think is so cool about the intersection of gaming and Web3 is that, gamers don't stop playing games because the price of Bitcoin is down, or, people don't, decide, hey, I'm not going to play video games this year because, NFT portfolios are lower in price, or even overall stock market's down. Like that, I think is why so many legacy businesses are in, because it's such a big market. I mean, I think like 220 billion in revenue or something like that, is what's did this year for the gaming industry. And games, just based on, because we're going into a recession or something like that, if even people sit to dive into their video games more because it's not really an extra cost. If you play 40 hours of games or 10 hours of games, it's no real different. And so, and that's why there's still a lot of VC sector, because there's a lot of money that can be spent there. And, it's kind of a world of a view of abundancy. There's a lot of room for games, and people will incrementally spend more if there's more fun games to play. So VCs are looking at those projects that, that they can deliver, so does the team have experience in developing a product, delivering a game so that it can get. And, in 21 and 22, there wasn't really the requirement for that. You could have maybe some characters built, your NFT drop ready to go, and you could get, some really good funding because people were, they wanted to be, VCs wanted to have that chance to get in on those early rounds because, so just a lot more due diligence involved. And so there is funding available out there right now. But it's, you just, projects have to be aware of what they're competing. When a VC's looking at 20 deals on their plate, it's not that a project's game isn't good. There are opportunities based on valuation, where the game or the project is at, in its roadmap deliverable, they're starting to matter a lot more. And so, I think one thing they do when they're looking at fundraising is kind of think to themselves, hey, if someone was coming to me in a project, but I also had the opportunity to invest in 20 other projects that you're aware of or being developed, like would that be where you allocate money? And so I think it's just the opportunity cost that a lot of VCs are looking at. They really want to be careful about which teams they're backing, so that they don't have a rug situation, or something where the team maybe wasn't as structured sound thought, and so development takes longer, it doesn't happen. So yeah, the money's out there. VCs are raising tons of money from there, and they need to put the money to work. I think end of 2022 there was a lot of just, hey, let's sit idle for a little bit. But 2023 is a new year, and so these VCs have LPs, which are limited partners, that are the ones that fund these funds, and they want a return on their capital, and they don't get a sitting in the checking account. So activity, I think, is already up a little bit. Some of our projects that had times during December and November of last year already have more meetings on the books this year for this first week. So yeah, I think we're really optimistic about 2023 in terms of funding. It's just the right are going to get that funding.
Yeah, and I want to come back to one of the points that you mentioned there on the overall, let's say, lack of volatility in consumer spending in this particular sector. So one of the big challenges that I think Web3 has had in terms of attracting meaningful developers and attracting major organizations and also major funding is because it's such a volatile industry. And we've seen over the past, say, 10, 12 years that as an industry and as an asset class, the volatility has basically been almost directly correlated with just general liquidity in the market. And so as you see market conditions evolve, it's basically been a play on how the market will work. And of course, you've got wild increases and decreases in individual projects, and you have sort of whatever the zeitgeist is at the moment, whether it was ICOs and DeFi, or whether it was NFTs, and you can go all the way back. But having an industry that comes in that I don't want to say is recession proof, but that is stable in terms of spending and is not just a purely financial industry that
Yeah.
swings based on the broader markets, I think is going to help dramatically as Web3 gaming is able to raise its share of the general Web3 market. You're going to see the overall market swings begin to reduce because you've got that stable sort of spending that's coming from gamers they don't triple their spending when all of a sudden the market conditions are better. I mean, presumably they're not going to. We don't really know
Yeah.
for sure. Some of them might, depending on the type of game they're playing, but generally they're playing with a budget based on entertainment expectations, and so
Yeah.
that's a piece that I think is often overlooked. If you're in Web3 and you want the industry to continue to grow in a major way, you want to bring in Web3 gaming because that's going to give additional stability just to the industry at large.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know, if anybody saw it, but yesterday, Amazon and Avalanche did a call about what Amazon's doing in the space. I mean, they're creating a $200 million builder fund to create this loop of bring builders with capital to the space. Those builders will bring users. The users will bring money, and then the money will bring more builders. And so doing it in an industry like gaming, where there already is so much spending compared to other industries, it really is going to be where blockchain technology gets a big lift, and we get I don't want to say like mass adoption of all things crypto, but there's going to be massive user transfer from just Web2 gaming to Web3 gaming, because we're finally going to have some games that are really fun to play. And it's not that the NFTs or the token or whatever is the forethought. Those are those are technologies that are used to create, a better experience. And so it is going to be interesting to see maybe what kind of increase in spending we can see when people start to get something for, their time and effort put into, these games, and furthermore the game economy. So we might see a dramatic increase in spending in video games because, even if you're not going to make money from it, if you at least just thought, hey, if I spend $200 in this game this year, in addition to, being part of an awesome community, playing a great game, I can retain at least that $200 because of, skins or tokens or rewards, that it's now not maybe viewed just as an expense. Now maybe it's viewed as, purchasing an asset like you would a collectible, or a toy or a Legos, or models, or cool watches or shoes. Just people love to collect things and have things to show for what they're interested in. And now taking that to gaming, where gamers can at the end of the day say like, hey, look, world, like, this is how good I am at this game, that I have these special NFTs, I have these special accomplishments. It is going to be interesting to see, if people do dramatically increase their spending in this industry. And I mean, just think if, even just the average person goes from spending $100 a year on in gaming expenses to 200. That would double an industry that's already at 220 billion in revenue to 400 billion if the average gamer just kind of did that. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And when you compare it to other activities, especially, with all this rampant inflation, at least here in the United States, but even across the world, gaming is still, one of the best economical forms of entertainment, that, can last a long time. I mean, you can play a game for months and maybe, you spend a couple $100, where, if you went on a vacation or a day trip, or out to dinner or something like that. I mean, you might spend that for 8 hours or
For
2 days.
gas.
Yeah, I guess even. So I think there's just so much potential, and that's why there's so many people interested in building in this space, because it is kind of recession proof, in terms of people are always going to play video games, and people are just going to keep playing more. And the more computing and phone technology increases, the better experiences people can have, that weren't even possible just 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I also think it interesting. It's part of the future growth industry. We talk about the average spending. So the average gamer spends about $1,000 a year. Obviously, the distribution of that is kind of a normal bell shaped curve, where you've got a lot of folks that are in the middle, but you also have quite a number that are basically free to play,
Mhm.
and a number that are uber whales that are spending millions, or tens of
Yeah.
thousands of dollars every year. Um, One of the interesting points of research that I did over the past week. I'm curious if you want to throw out a guess here. So I looked at what's the spending across different demographics on gaming, and I had a pretty good sense because I knew general stats on adult spending. How much do you think the average 10 to 17-year-old spends on gaming per year? And this is across all globally, not
Yeah.
specific developed countries or whatever. What
Well,
would be your guess here?
yeah. If I just add up how much money we give to our nieces and nephews, in the terms of Roblox gift cards, V-Bucks
Yeah,
gift cards, cash, Xbox subscription cards. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I almost want to say it would come close to that 1,000 or $1,200, based on maybe spending like $100 a month on console games and subscription services.
yeah, yeah. So globally, and this blew me away, because like I assume that might be right from for like more affluent countries. Globally, it's between $500 and $600 per child
Wow.
in the 10 to 17-year-old demographic is how much they're spending on gaming. So I mean, I didn't go back and do the math like when I was a kid, how much was I spending in inflation adjusted dollars. Like it feels like an awful lot to me. And
Yeah.
you want to talk about capturing the mind share, if you're building a brand or an IP that you want to last for 5, 10, 15, 30 years, if you're attracting a decent share of these individuals, these kids, teenagers, when they're at that age, and they're basically spending their parents, their grandparents, their aunts and uncles' money right now, but they get addicted to your game or to your studio, this is a great way to guarantee that you're going to have probably a lifelong fan. I mean, I think back to Blizzard was it for me growing up, where
Yeah.
all the way back to like the original Warcraft 1, and
Hmm.
then like when Warcraft 2 came out, that was it. I was a Blizzard fanboy for the next 20 plus years. I mean, to the point that I still over 30 years after that played World of Warcraft, and so I think this is a way that you create lifelong fans in an industry, is if you are able to attract their attention when they're younger. And so a lot of these studios, I think, probably recognize that, or if they don't, they need to focus on how do you attract the next generation of gamers into not just your product but also the industry in general.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one area that by having blockchain gaming, kind of how it's when it started a couple of years ago, it was so focused on, kind of the DeFi and investment aspect that it did leave out, miners essentially, because, you had to get, accounts to get on ramps to crypto, and, you had to have all these different things. And so there's been a transition where, again, instead of having it be, invest in this NFT and make money, it's more, hey, come play this really fun game. And studios and technologies is getting better to where those technology aspects that may have eliminated some of the younger people are getting more and more built into the system, so that there's not as much focus on the actual technology of, or the access to the game, but more playing the game itself. And so that's been a big term we've just seen in the past 6 to 8 months, is more and more projects are saying, hey, let's just keep focus on making the game and the technology behind the scenes, as far as whether they're going to own an NFT, whether it's going to be one token or two tokens, all that, has to become, you know, almost like idiot proof. It's like you don't want people to not come play your game because you've got, a challenging way to buy the asset that you're going to use in the game, or the character, or NFT in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, it's the cool thing is that the younger generation, they're so smart, and they're so keen to pick up new things, that education of how that stuff works is going to be super important, because they are spending their parents' money, and they might need their parent to get a wallet set up and fund it, and help do the transaction and stuff. But I think that's a skill that really everybody should know these days. I mean, yeah, I mean, you might use your regular bank account and everything, but learning how to use a wallet and stuff is really key, I think, to just having an overall sound financial picture. But a lot of games and technology are building stuff so that you don't even have to do that. You can use a username and password type setup, and the games are taking care of all the blockchain stuff behind the scenes, so you still get the benefit of owning your assets, being able to transfer them, having potential for rewards. But it's being done in such a customer friendly way now that I think that next generation is going to love the fact that, we all see that there's professional streamers, and tons of, young gamers are like, well, if I play long enough, I can get my YouTube channel, and I can get subscriptions and do all that. But where blockchain gaming comes in is now all these kids that are spending $500 to $600. I mean, think if you even just retain half of that, in some sort of like earning potential, or at the end of the day, instead of just spending that money and have nothing, you've got these super cool characters that maybe you can take from game to game. I mean, we're consulting on some games right now that are able to bring in IP from like 15 other different projects for use directly in their game. And so I think kids are going to love that aspect of it. I mean, kids love owning and collecting things, and because as a kid, you don't own, many things yourself. You don't own your
Yeah,
house, you don't own
right.
your car. You're just kind of at the whims. But maybe if you could own this player with this really cool gun and outfit and all that, I think it's just something. So if kids are spending that much now, with it being nothing but an expense, I mean, what are parent how much money will parents give kids if they're like, wait. So if I give you $1,000 to go play video games, like you're telling me you can actually make an additional 1,000, and I don't have to give you an
Yes.
allowance anymore.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's a really cool thing, and that wealth being able to be distributed throughout the world is really cool too. It's a way for maybe kids in areas where there isn't the financial opportunity of some of the more developed countries, but they're a super great gamer. I mean, a couple dollars goes a long way in their economy, in their
Hmm.
local economy. So, if they're able to, get onto a game that's free to play, eventually level up and grind and get some NFTs to where now they can get into the earning side of things. I mean, there's just a lot of economic potential that 220 billion in revenue or something that's going to be. It's really cool that some of that's going to trickle out to areas that may not have gotten that kind of economic input. And so we're working with a couple projects that are focusing on that, and it's really fun to see how we can give people an economic opportunity they wouldn't have normally had.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so I want to transition now to talk a little bit about some of the elements of the industry that are probably not so transparent with a lot of our listeners. If you're not a builder, you're not a consultant, how does this work? So, in order to pull back the curtain a little bit, I'm going to ask you to share a little about how ACS works with these studios. So, as you mentioned, kind of every contract, every project is unique in what their requirements are, and what ACS might provide. What are we talked about some of the typical services, but what are the ways that ACS actually gets compensated for the work that is being done?
Yeah, our mantra is, at the end of the day, we want the project to, walk away and think, wow, I can't believe what we're getting in return for what we're paying. And I want our ACS consultants to think, I can't believe I'm getting paid for what I'm doing. And so it's really finding that middle ground for each project that makes sense for them. So, we really take a deep dive at, the company's finances, their revenue possibilities, their fundraising, and we structure, the deal to make sense so that, our services and the cost of our services aren't going to do something to the detriment of our own advice to them. So if we're helping them plan out how to expand their runway the best and focus as much money to really the core aspects, we want to make sure that we're not viewed as an expense that doesn't have a return on it. So like you said, we structure every deal differently. Equity, tokens, cash for service agreements. It's really whatever makes sense for both projects and the scope of work that's needed. For example, we have a couple, projects that, we are essentially their outsourced marketing firm. They're builders and they don't, either have the time or expertise to run a marketing department. And so, that's a monthly retainer fee that basically, our team is part of your team, and it's a cash, monthly retainer for that. There's other projects that are just getting going, but we have a really strong belief in what they have in the long-term vision. So we might structure that and become an equity partner or get some sort of token allocation. And that's really fun. That's a lot of what I do is helping to structure that so that again, ACS gets rewarded and we can bring on higher level consultants. I mean, if you're an expert in this space and in some specific niche, you can command a pretty good dollar amount, for working for different projects. And so, we do have to make sure that the compensation of those individuals is enough so that they take the time to dedicate their time to that ACS client. And so, yeah, it's just really a balancing act of making sure that each, the ACS and our consultants are getting compensated for their time and their expertise, but their projects are also getting a really good value for what they're paying.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't think we've structured really any two clients the same way yet, which is really fun. And again, our clients appreciate the fact that we're not trying to stick them into a standard contract, that we are really taking the time to customize it for them.
So let's jump into this point you mentioned at the end. we've got a really great group of rockstar consultants at ACS already. I've enjoyed getting to meet and know and work with all of them. It makes it fun to work on some of these really unique and sticky challenges too, as you're
Mhm.
working, tokenomics design or go to market strategy. Let's say that one of our listeners wants to get involved in consulting, business development activities, and so on in either with ACS or just in Web3 in general. What advice would you give them to get started?
Yeah, I'd say never stop learning. Even if you're, being an expert in, a niche or a certain field is definitely helpful, and aligning that need or that service that you can offer with what's needed in the marketplace. So, understanding what challenges, game studios and other Web3 projects are facing, and then, making sure your skill set, fits that. And so, always, continuing education, learning about, new aspects in the niche that you want to be an expert in. And then also surrounding yourself with other people that can be the source of that information. I come from also a real estate background, and one of the things is like you don't always need to be the source of the information, because we really always want an expert to be the source, but you can be the source of the source. And so there's a lot of value in being able to take a client and link them up with many other people in the space. And so I think that really makes for a really good consultant is, be an expert in a specific area that is in need, but then also be able to have a network of people that you can also link those people to, because you're not going to be an expert in everything. And so, if one of your listeners, if anyone in the audience, does have a passion for, a certain area, again, just reach out to me and we can start that conversation, because, at ACS, we really are limited right now with how many clients we can take on because of bandwidth. We could probably go double and triple our client count right now, but we're not going to do that until we have enough consultants on board, so that when the client needs to have a meeting, when the client has, a special project come up, we're not telling them, it's going to be like, 2 months till we can get to that. We want to have the people on staff to help take advantage of, that and meet those needs. So yeah, if you're doing it on your own, just start to form, like a brand about what you're, going to be the expert in. So if you're really good on NFT launches, focus on that, like start to finish of like what goes into, doing a proper NFT launch, and putting pen to paper. I think that's a really important thing too, is a lot of people have strategies and ideas, but being able to articulate those things into, a business plan or a roadmap, that really commands, a premium in this space, because that gives that building or that founder team, actually a guide of what to do. And it's not just all up in the air. So, being able to put pen to paper, I think, is really important. And then again, yeah, for ACS, if what we're doing is of interest to you, hit us up, and we can see if there's the potential to work with our existing clients, or maybe by you coming on board now, it expands. I mean, maybe you're a certain type of developer, or you're a certain type of networker, or maybe have like this massive connection of people because your dad's a politician or something like that. I mean, I don't know. But there's just a lot of specific needs, and ACS is going to grow massively this year in that regard, because there are special things like tax consultancy, a 3D modeler, all the different things that a game or a business could want. Most of these projects, they don't have everything, and so they're always on the lookout for people to help them, again, just save time, energy, and resources, and make their vision come to market sooner rather than later.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, and I always encourage people, exactly like Kevin said, if you have an idea, you've got a skill set, just start getting involved. I mean, be in Discord for two, three, four projects that you think are interesting. Start adding value to people. Get your brand out there, and become known for just being knowledgeable in whatever your field and your contribution area is. People are going to begin to take notice. And then you've got to make that transition. You say, okay, I want to move from more just being in the space, learning, upping my skill set and my brand, to actually taking that next step. And then it's about making connections and networking and finding potential projects that you can support. And I mean, I've shared with a lot of our audience members, I'm not full time Web3, right? But I do an awful lot of consulting work and support work. And so, I found that's a good balance for me at the moment where I can be heavily involved in a lot of projects, build my brand, help build the industry as a whole. And then at some point in the future, yeah, I'll probably move to be full time Web3. But it's one of those that's kind of a stepwise approach. Obviously, depending on where you are in your personal situation, you may have specific requirements or obligations to family members or whatever that you have to meet, and so depending on where you are, you can take more or less risk. But definitely, I just encourage everyone to get involved and kind of focus on what is that next step for you in your career progression as you move more into Web3 and hopefully in the Web3 gaming sector. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And at ACS, we're really like this creative outlet for for people. And so some of the consultants that we've brought on, that's exactly what we are. Is they might have other projects they're working with, or they might have a job that is non Web3, and ACS really gives them this creative outlet to just how we talk about how streamers and gamers, monetize by doing, different streams and stuff. People that are really good at problem solving and networking and things like that, a lot of times, they don't ever get paid for all the advice they give to people for years and years and years, and they help other people make tremendous amounts of money and do successful things. And ACS really allows people to harness that and get paid, for helping people build. And I don't think there's anything wrong with getting paid for something you're really good at. And so it really is a fun creative outlet for some really smart minds in the industry to say, hey, I do this over here, but it's really great to be able to talk to like 4 other projects that don't have maybe the same skill set, and I can be respected in their group. And I just my ideas are really valuable to them, and at the end of the day, if we're able to turn that into some sort of compensation, it's really good. Both for the project getting the value, but also these consultants being able to kind of finally make money off of all their good ideas.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So, Kevin, this has been a really great conversation. I love always talking about the industry. I think Arcade and ACS specifically are really at the forefront of a lot of these projects and builders that are working to push the space forward. So, really excited about what 2023 is going to bring for both. So, any final thoughts with our audience before we wrap up today?
The final thought is always what gets me. You don't want to sound like too corny and too rah rah, but no, I mean ACS. We're just really proud of what our team has accomplished in the short time that we have been doing this. We encourage builders to reach out to us for networking and partnership opportunities. Again, if you do have an interest in a specific skill set that you think would be helpful to a lot of projects, again, contact us. I mean, you can contact Annie too, if you know Annie and he can get a meeting set up with us. But yeah, again, we're just trying to bring, all the good players, just like I think I spoke about when we did the arcade video, it really is just about finding, everybody that's got the right ethics, the right morals, the right, and the good business ideas together, so that things don't get lost in the shuffle, maybe just because you don't have corporate finance experience, or you don't know how to raise money, but you've got a tremendous idea and team that could build something. So yeah, I would just say no question is a dumb question, as far as stuff that you might ask for help with. And yeah, we're just really excited to be building in this space. A lot of people said like, well, 2022 was like such a down year. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, 2022, we launched ACS we helped and started networking with a lot of projects. And so, I only can imagine, if some of the other market forces, can return and be, winds at our back for 2023. I think it's just going to be, a great year to be building in this space. And I'm really excited to see, not only what our projects deliver, but just excited to see what all of our, networking partners and just all the different games that are going to come to market in 2023. I think it's just going to be a really exciting year.
Hmm. Yeah, fully agreed. So Kevin, thank you again. Great discussion. And for our audience, again, I just encourage you, whether you're a builder, whether you're just someone participating in the industry, to figure out what your next key step is that you need to take to grow yourself, your brand, your project, and work to find the right partners to help build that. Whether that's ACS or whether that's me. I love working with all of my audience members, and we look forward as an industry to continuing to grow. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care. Have a good one.